Good evening, and once more welcome to the second course offered by UPM, or the People's Marian University of the Focolare Movement. Let me remind you that the theme of this year's course is Dialogue and Evangelization. Our first lesson discussed the evangelizing mission of the Church in the Philippines. Then we talked about the 8th chapter of the encyclical Fratelli Tutti and went on to interreligious dialogue enhanced by the document on human fraternity for world peace and living together, signed by Pope Francis with the Grand Imam of Al-Azhar, Ahmad Al-Taib. We also discussed enculturation and the Asian traditions, and the role that dialogue plays in proclaiming the gospel in Asia. Then, we followed the process that led to the Catholic Church's present commitment to dialogue. Later, we discussed dealings with other Christians, the ecumenical dialogue. Tonight, we shall try to ask ourselves this question: am I prepared to dialogue? When I dialogue, whoever may be my dialogue partner, do I really understand the other and make myself understood? In her talk entitled The Challenge of Dialogue, Tita Puangco will try to answer this question together with us. Tita is the founder of the Anchila Enterprise Development Consulting, of which she was CEO and chairperson for several years. Anchila Consulting is a leader in training and organization development based in the Philippines with a Southeast Asian reach. At present, Tita is heading a new firm for consultancy services. Tita Puangco earned her bachelor's degree in literature, major in journalism, magna cum laude, at the University of Santo Tomas in Manila. She was also a BPI scholar at the Asian Institute of Management, where she graduated with a master's in management degree with distinction. She has a very interesting work experience in the most diverse areas, from banking to business management to teaching, public relations, and mass media, both in the public and the private sectors. She has also received several awards. But for this evening, let me just mention that Tita was a NEDA USAID scholar in communication planning and programming at the University of Chicago, Michigan State University, and Indiana State University. She was also a Ford Foundation travel grantee for development communication in India, Malaysia, Singapore, and Thailand. She has produced and hosted a television program called Workforce and authored a book entitled Anxious People at Work. She also headed the Regional Operations Division of the Philippines National Media Production Center. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Tita Puangco.
Welcome to the course on the challenges of dialogue. Have you ever had the experience of communicating to a person or group and feeling that you are not heard and understood? The art of dialogue is at the heart of communications, building communis, as in Latin, or commonness of thinking, feeling, and doing. Very vital for our mental health, as well as creating a sense of well-being and a vibrant community. We are blessed that today studies are available that can be tools for dialogue. Research shows that 90% of conflicts arise from communication that did not work or did not happen. When information is not communicated or understood in an identical way or is perceived as not appropriate. One of the models from the communication sciences is the communication process itself. So, our session today, we will try to highlight the importance of communications and dialogue, then learn new tools for the dialogue communication process, the communication square, and the SRRA formula. Then practice the art of appreciative inquiry when giving feedback. Then, considering that we often have to deal with different generations, how do we sensitively communicate and motivate to them? Let us examine the communication process, the seemingly simple yet neglected process of sending messages and giving feedback between source and recipient and vice versa. One has to be aware of possible obstacles, whether in language, nonverbal communications, and others. So let us examine the elements of communications. The source has a message that he or she decodes or deciphers in a specific language and uses a medium to transmit to the receiver. Then the recipient is someone who receives the message and decodes, trying to understand it. He receives and reacts, gives feedback in a coded way that is in turn received and decoded by the other party. The process happens in both verbal and nonverbal communications. It may involve acting or not acting and is read and decoded by the other. They are usually carried out without consciousness of the processes. And we think communications is so normal, so why do we have to be conscious? The quality of the process is essential, as we know. If the process is weak, deciphering becomes difficult. The sender's message can be understood in one way that may be different from one's initial intentions. Now, on the element of code, this depends on one's upbringing, culture, socialization, and experiences. An example would be the difference how people can interpret what being family means. The model of Schulz van Thun may provide a perspective to respond to the challenge of communications. One of the methods of speaking of the sender. Two is the manner of receiving of the recipient. Then is the challenge of transmission, being sensitive to four aspects: content, appeal, relationship, and manner of telling. This translates communications into four perspectives and give an example in practical terms. One is content or information. For example, you are seated with a partner in a car, and then you say, the traffic light is green. So that is the information. But two, it also conveys an appeal without you saying it. Example, you've got to go now. Three, it says something about the partner's relationship. I have to always remind you what to do. Four, it can reveal the feeling of the person talking. I don't feel comfortable whenever you drive. It pays to reflect how we communicate beyond sending messages. So let us look at the nuances of communication, which is called meta-communication. So reflect. What did I mean to say with what I am saying? How do I see reality? What are my perceptions? How do I decode what is being said? The open view of dialogical meta-communications is important. Let us ask ourselves, what is my attitude trying to live dialogue? The essence of being to know my communication partner better, making our relationship better instead of defending myself. What makes for healthy attitudes in dialogue? I wish to suggest the following principles. One is the conviction that every dialogue is a learning opportunity. Two is feeling equal, not superior to each other. Three is maintaining openness. This means aware of one's own ideas and concepts, but is willing to suspend judgment. Four is keeping a level of trust for dialogue to come and occur. Marshall Rosenberg suggests keeping an environment of peace and understanding instead of violence and provocation. So some tips. One is to speak with empathy. The other feels he or she is understood and does not need to defend oneself but feels free to act. We know the feeling when a person feels trapped and cornered and therefore becomes defensive. Rosenberg suggests using the language of the giraffe. Why the giraffe? The giraffe has a big heart, which represents empathy towards oneself and the other person. How does one embody empathy? It can be embodied in the awareness of my motivations, my needs and emotions. This awareness enables me to put myself in the other person's shoes. It means emptying myself in order to welcome the other person, ready to lose or suspend one's reactions, making myself one. Then again, the giraffe has a very long neck, signifying having a general panoramic view of oneself at a certain distance from the situation, distinguishing emotions from the situation. Let us say you notice you disagree with what the sender of the message is saying. How do you ensure that the person will appreciate your point of view? Again, use the EPM formula. E stands for empathy. P is pinpoint the problem. M is to move forward. Empathy is engendered when we listen intensely, non-judgmentally, and with trust to the listener. Then pinpoint problem with a calm voice, not threatening, and then move forward the discussion. I wish to suggest a nonviolent communication process, the SRRA method. It means situation, reaction, reflection, and action. It starts with describing the situation without evaluating or judging, and without judging the person. Example, talking to my son. I noted you came in almost midnight last night. Then describe your reaction and reflection. I was worried for you that the weak car battery caused you a problem. And then move on to action. Next time, send me a text so I can be of help. This is the SRRA formula. The other model that can help, especially in managing change, is appreciative inquiry. The traditional way is you look for a problem, do a diagnosis, and at once prescribe a solution. Now, David Cooper Ryder said, appreciative inquiry, on the other hand, is the appreciative search for the best in people, their organization, and in the world around them. In appreciative inquiry, one uses three principles. One is to look for what works in a human situation. The reality shaped by conversations that starts by asking a question. The process is made up of 5 Ds. First is to define. 2 is to discover what is good and has worked. 3 is the dream and what might be. 4 is the design of what should be and what is the idea. Then the 5th is the destiny, how to make it happen. Let us work on an example. Recently, we had a webinar on election education for student leaders that left them excited to vote intelligently. They had 3 wishes for the future. 1 is to spread the webinar ideas to as many youth groups before the May election. 2, that it becomes a part of the student curriculum for their particular college. 3, that it spreads in social media. Definition, therefore, should cover an affirmative topic that is positively stated, relevant, and within the power of people to do something about it. Then discovery is about doing appreciative interviews. This means looking for the best rather than negative experiences. The inquiry is the intervention. It is not just the questions and how they are asked. This step is after stories, not opinions nor analysis. Examples of questions of appreciative inquiry. What has been your best experience so far? What do you value most about it? What factors made this experience possible? If you have one wish, what would it be? Then focus on the dream. Imagine the ideal. What do you want to see? What is the future? What is the perfect outcome of your plan? And develop a slogan or statement that sums it up. Then, you move now to design. How do I turn the dream into reality? What aspects of the dream do we have the energy to take forward? What ideas could bring your dream to reality? And finally is delivery. What actions will we take? How will we measure our success? And how will we learn from what we will do? Now, the final thing that we're going to talk about is communication across generations. In this new millennium, we experience generational diversity. We have 5 different generations: veterans, baby boomers, Generation X, Generation Y, and Generation Z. It is challenging how to get these groups to communicate and work together effectively. So how do we get to reduce conflicts? Here are some guidelines. 1 is to understand each generation, to stop generational collisions and work with them effectively. So let us remember that each generation is shaped by the year of birth, age, and critical events that occurred in society during their time. The other one is that each generation has unique work values and ethics with preferred ways of managing and being managed. So let us get to learn about them better. So what are our conclusions? Communications continue to be a challenge as we try to build unity of ideas, plans, and actions. If we do it well, trust builds and relationships are strengthened. If sometimes we fail, we can always try and begin again, always sensitive to the person or group we are communicating with. And my final slogan is, don't give up. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Tita, for this eye-opener. It will surely help us in our effort to establish dialogue of all kinds and at all levels. Tita Puangco will be happy to answer your questions and listen to your observation and comments at a Zoom meeting on Saturday, April 30, 2022. Please ask your group leaders for the Zoom link. In the meantime, you may send your comments, observations, or questions to upm1phils@gmail.com. I repeat, upm1phils@gmail.com. Thank you for being with us this evening. Please be reminded that our lessons are held every 3rd Friday of the month at 7 o'clock in the evening. So our next UPM lesson will be on May 20, 2022 at the same time and in the same channel. Have a pleasant evening and may God's blessings be with you.